Hi everyone, it's Chenzo from Reality Art Pod here to talk about season 1 of Netflix's Battle Camp, where 16 Netflix reality stars will fight it out to win $250,000. Before I dive in, I do weekly reality TV recaps, so if you like this content, consider liking and subscribing. My videos aren't meant to replace the original content, so I encourage you to check out Battle Camp on Netflix to enjoy and form your own opinion. But let's dive into it, starting with episode 1 titled Welcome to Battle Camp, which starts with an introduction to our slew of Netflix reality stars, including Trey from Squid Game, who assures us that his mom is with us in spirit, but clears up that she is still living. The show is hosted by Taylor Lewin, a former NFL player and host of a podcast titled Bussin' with the Boys. Surely Taylor didn't look up Bussy before naming this podcast, or did he? And the players head to battle camp in buses. Gabby, who's that girl from Netflix's Cheer, says she sees this as the Hunger Games. Trey says he hopes that Lorenzo from his show isn't there, but guess what, Trey? Lorenzo's on the other bus in his nautical knitwear. Lorenzo says he's not the same as he was on Squid Game. He's prepared to be worse. When they arrive, Taylor tells them that their busmates will be their teammates, starting with the Wolves, Trey, Irina, Louie, and Gabby, the Bears, QT, Shuby, Avery, and Gio, and the Eagles, Georgia, Tony, Lexi, and Lorenzo. After Taylor addresses the beef between Trey and Lorenzo, they're told they'll be competing for $250,000, that one player will win. They'll have to fight it out to avoid being replaced by new campers along the way. Tony from the Mole isn't intimidated by the other men. He calls them lounging princesses. They head to their first daily challenge, the water relay. They'll have to swim across a lake, with one player from each team being responsible for a task to collect flags, a balance bridge, pulling weights out of the water, a math equation, and a kayak race. The first team to collect all 4 flags wins immunity and will be safe from elimination. The last place team will all be up for elimination as well. This is Survivor Meets the Challenge, and I'm loving it already. They get started, beginning with balance. Avery, Irina, and Georgia get started, with Georgia getting the Eagles to a quick lead. Irina is slow on the swim and sets the Wolves behind. Tony lifts all of the weights to find the Eagles flag and still gets out of the strength challenge first, adding to his already high confidence. For the Eagles, Lexi, who called herself a mathematician earlier this episode, nails her equation and gives Lorenzo the flag, but oh no, the flag is in the water as Lorenzo paddles away. He's followed by the 2 other paddlers. Shady cameraman does Shuby so dirty, focusing on his giant boogers that I won't show. Tune into this show on Netflix for giant boogies. Lorenzo paddles himself to the finish, telling us that people in the neighboring village thought he was a dolphin. But as I said, oh no, the red flag is still adrift. They don't even know where it is. In the end, the Wolves, who started in last, win the challenge and win immunity, followed by the Bears. The Eagles lose because they lost their flag. Lexi takes accountability for the flag being lost, and Taylor gives Shuby a bussy back ride back to camp. This camp has everything. Bonfire, giant individual beds, a hot tub. This made me want to camp. Tony finds a mirror to cheer himself up and has a great attitude about losing. Maybe next time, he says. If there is a next time, I say. At night, they're roasting marshmallows, joking about Tony being an idiot, but he tells us they haven't caught on to him being a secret genius yet. They meet up with Taylor and he means bussiness, introducing them to the wheel. They need to do everything to keep their name off the wheel. When the wheel is spun, the player it lands on will be eliminated from the game. The challenge winners are off the wheel, the losers are automatically all on the wheel, and they'll soon vote to add more players' names to it. Their name can also appear more than once on there, increasing their chances of going home. They also learn that the winners will dish out punishments the next day. They'll choose 3 players to face a punishment and 1 player will save themselves. Back in the cabins, Tony starts a campaign to get Lexi out for costing them the challenge, seeing her as a liability moving forward. The next day, the Bugle wakes them up. The Wolves raise their flag. Tony, who this episode has been all about so far, now expresses interest in Gabby. Players are starting to get sketched out by Avery, who's been telling us that she's trying to keep a low profile and hide her abilities. Avery and Tony bond over both being from the Mole. Time for the Wolves to dole out some punishments. They choose Gio, Lexi, and Avery to face a stamina challenge called Burn, where they need to do an endurance challenge, doing a wall sit for as long as they can. Lexi quickly offers herself up to lose in this, in an effort to make up for her costing her team in the daily challenge. They get started, with shady cameraman back at it, focusing on the hole in Lexi's tights. Lexi drops out after 2 minutes, and Avery ends up winning this, saving herself from facing the wheel. Lexi and Gio are going up on that thing. Now the other players will vote to fill the remaining 12 spots on the wheel, with each of their votes filling a spot. They get to strategizing. Players start throwing Avery's name out there, which spooks Tony. He still wants Lexi gone as he continues his anti-Lexi campaign, activating Avery by telling her that Lexi's coming for her, causing Avery to spread the Lexi campaign as well. They head to vote, with Lexi and Avery voting for each other, but a few of the guys, including Shuby and Trey, express an appetite for targeting Tony while they can to eliminate a strong player. After the vote, the players all talk about Tony running the strategy in this round, while he talks to himself in the mirror. They head to the wheel, where Taylor reveals the players with votes. Lexi got 5 votes from Tony, Avery, QT, Shuby, and Gio, and Avery got 7 votes from Irina, Lorenzo, Lexi, Gabby, Georgia, Louis and Trey. Taylor spins the wheel, which takes us to episode 2 titled Frozen Out. That wheel is still spinning, and ultimately lands on Lexi, eliminating her from the game. So we lose Lexi here, who we learned absolutely nothing about in her time on the show. She's put on the Eagles team, and right off the bat, costs her team in the challenge where they really should have won. She tries to make it right by throwing the punishment challenge, which seemed to work a little bit, as she didn't get all of the votes, and opened the door for the other players to play hard and vote for Avery. Had the Eagles won this challenge, the players could have realized even more that they need to vote to keep weaker players in, to keep the other teams weak. So I think had she survived this episode, she could have been in it for a while longer. I've never seen The Ultimatum. Part of me had plans to watch all of these shows, but her appearance here didn't really inspire me to want to watch that. But who knows, maybe she's a laugh riot on there. Following the challenge, they're told that Lexi will be replaced on Team Eagle with a new player. Tony is thrilled about this, but the other teams feel like they gave the Eagles an opportunity to replace their weakest player with someone new. We meet the new player, Polly from Selling the OC, who shows up in an athleisure magenta mini dress and severe big energy. She's excited to hear that her castmate and friend Gio is there. Tony is so happy to have Polly on his team. Players are told they need to pick one player from each team to be in a hero role in the challenge. QT steps up for the Bears. Irina says she doesn't want to do it for the Wolves, which makes her seem like not a good team player. So Wolves pick Trey, and Georgia is picked for the Eagles. So those players go off, and the rest of the players head to the daily challenge, where they're met with the wall, which looks like a horrible thing on all sides. Their challenge is the drop. Team members will be standing on planks on the edge. The hero players will be asked superlative questions about the players on their teams, with one team member being the answer. The guessers will pass the flag to the person they think is the correct answer. Then the correct answer person will drop. If they picked the right person, they get a point. The team with the most points wins. They start the game. Who has the biggest ego? QT says Gio, and the team agrees, winning the point. Same question for Eagles. Georgia easily picks Tony, and of course they get it right. For the Wolves, Trey picks Louis. Irina pushes for herself, and they lose the point. Who's the biggest game player? They all get it right, picking Avery, Louis, and Tony. Who's the most attractive? QT says Avery, but the team guessed Gio and got it wrong. For the Wolves, Irina pushes Louis as the answer, but Trey said Gabby, costing them another point. For the Eagles, Tony pushes Lorenzo to make Tony the answer, but Georgia picks Lorenzo, so they get it wrong. The final question is who's the best ally? Trey picked Louis, but the team thinks Gabby. They lose another point. Bears pick Shuby, who's terrified but bravely falls, giving them their third point. And Georgia picks Tony, feeling like Tony is going to push his name to be the answer again. But the team picks Lorenzo, making the Bears, led by QT, the daily winners and safe for the round. The Wolves came in last and will all be thrown up on the wheel, which Trey and Gabby blame Irina for, accurately. Georgia apologizes to her team and explains to Tony that she thinks Lorenzo is more attractive, which cuts Tony to his core. In the mess hall, Irina ruins dinner with bad jokes, getting major side-eye from Tony, who's just trying to have some pizza. Polly and Gio hang out on an awesome cargo net that I want to lay on right now. They don't like Irina either. The next day, Polly reports back to the Eagles that there's already a movement against Irina, which they all see as an opportunity to save themselves. The Bears pick players for the punishment. Submerged, they pick Irina, Georgia, and Lorenzo. Whoever can stay in an ice bath the longest will win. At the 5-minute mark, they need to go underwater, and whoever can hold their breath longest wins. They get started. The girls seem fine, but Lorenzo is not handling this well, convulsing and speaking in tongues. They all make it to holding their breath, where Irina drops out first, followed by Lorenzo, making Georgia the winner. The other two will be added to the wheel. Irina is devastated and hides in bed, giving everyone the freedom to talk crap about her and her jokes. Wolves are fine with letting Irina go and not telling her, but Georgia and Lorenzo are considering turning on Tony. Trey appeases Irina, telling her to vote for Tony, and the players head to the vote where Irina is shown to get a lot of votes. Later, the Wolves have a super awkward team meeting where they're all lying to Irina's face. Gabby's crying about it, and Irina even comforts Gabby, which made the Wolves look cowardly. After the votes were cast, there was no benefit in continuing to lie to Irina. They head to the wheel where Tony got one vote from Irina, who instantly knows she's cooked and starts breaking down. She got all 11 of the remaining votes, which slowly light up on the board. Kind of sad to watch. She walks away crying, which leads us to episode 3 titled Blindsided. Nobody comforts Irina. They leave it up to Taylor to go support her, and when it comes time to spin the wheel, I know I'm not the only person hoping that against all odds Irina would stay, but it lands on Irina, who leaves without saying goodbye. So we lose Irina here, who was one of the bigger villains from Love is Blind, remembered for her personality rubbing the other girls the wrong way, and ultimately her match as well, just like it did here. She cost her team in this challenge, which should have made the other teams want to keep her in the game, to keep sandbagging the Wolves, but her jokes around camp universally made everyone want her out. Through it all, I don't see her as a villain on this show. She ends up coming off as a sympathetic figure. It was hard to watch her getting all those votes, and her team lied to her because they were afraid of her. They looked foolish when she didn't give them the reaction they were expecting. She's a memorable character, so I'm glad she was on this cast and got the chance to expand on her lore, but she just wasn't cut out for this game. Following Irina's departure, Gabby is devastated. This was really hard on her, but it all turns Tony on. He flirts with her, which seems to cheer her up. The next day, the Wolves get a new teammate, Bree from Too Hot to Handle Season 6, who's here to win and flirt. She's familiar with her teammate Louis, who is on her season, and she's into him. Tony plots with his bros Louis and Trey to get Gabby's attention. Louis likes Tony and feels like he's a good guy. They head to their next challenge, where Taylor awkwardly tells Bree that he's nicknamed her Breezy McNeasy. Why? Dear God, why? Bussy McMussy, do better. For their challenge, they'll be playing a game of deception. Each round, one team will be on display. One member of the team will be tortured. The rest of them have to act like they're being tortured. The other teams need to correctly guess who is really being affected to get the points. Wolves are up first, facing potential electrocution. Louis is the one really being shocked, but Gabby is doing her big one, going for an Oscar. The other teams pick Gabby and were tricked, giving the Wolves 2 points. The Eagles have to drink strawberry milkshakes, but one of them has a gross drink of moldy cheese.
I hate this drink.
Personally, I hate strawberry. I would rather the cheese. They get started and they're all throwing up. It's gross. Tony is clutching his throat. Lorenzo has a booger eruption. Why does this show have so many boogers? Both teams pick Lorenzo, but Tony had the cheese, giving Eagles 2 points. The next few punishments are kind of dumb, starting with one person is chopping onions, the rest aren't. They're doing this challenge all damn day. The sun is even setting. The final round sees the Bears with one person having extra spicy hot dog. Shuby has the spicy dog and tricks the other players, winning the Bears their second straight immunity. Wolves are again in last place and are all on the wheel. Later, Louis and Bree get flirty in the bathroom, which leads to them going bump in the night in the Wolves' shared cabin. In the morning, players strategize. The Bears want to target Polly, but Gio isn't down to turn on his friend. In the Eagle cabin, Polly floats Louis' name. Louis' bro Tony doesn't like that, creating another enemy in Tony, who starts his own campaign against Polly, bringing it to the Wolves. Georgia is sick of Tony turning on her team members and plans to vote for Tony and not tell anyone she's doing it. Gabby continues to flirt with Tony, but tells us she has a boyfriend back home and is just using Tony for the game. The Bears pick players for the punishment, choosing Bree because she's new, and then Polly and Gabby with logic that all the same gender makes it fair competition. In this punishment, they'll be counting steps with a pedometer. The player with the most steps in an hour will protect themselves from being thrown up on the wheel. They get started, Gabby and Bree are running around, and Polly decides to do her little tap dance all around camp. This challenge looks grueling, and Gabby impresses everyone, leading to her winning the challenge, sending Polly and Bree to the wheel. They head to vote, and this episode ends with a cliffhanger. Shock vote reveal that Gabby voted for Tony, which leads to episode 4 titled Betrayed. Taylor reveals that Bree got 2 votes, which were from QT and Avery. Louis got 2 from Polly and Lorenzo. Polly got 3 from Trey, Louis, and Bree. Tony got 4 from Gio, Shuby, Georgia, and Gabby. And Trey got 1 vote from Tony. Taylor spins the wheel and it lands on Gabby, eliminating her from the game. Players are devastated, especially Tony, who's crying hard. So we lose Gabby here, who's arguably the star of the show Cheer. Battle Camp didn't really do a good job of letting folks know that Gabby really is that girl. I wish this show put a little more effort into highlighting these players' greatest moments from their previous shows. Well, Cheer did not age well, but Gabby was a leader on the Wolves team, holding her own in the challenges. She was playing the game well, being eliminated here with no votes against her, becoming the first player eliminated just for being on the wheel in general for losing the challenge. Wild because she did a great job in that challenge too. She was working with Tony, flirting with him despite having a boyfriend, then voting for him, which was very Parvati-esque. She was complicit in lying to Irina, but of everyone involved, she seemed the most remorseful. Overall, she comes out of this looking positive and robbed by the wheel. I'd love to see her compete again or make a jump over to MTV's challenge. Following Gabby's elimination, even Taylor says he's emotional. Tony breaks down crying in the cabin and confessional, saying Gabby didn't deserve this. Her team is feeling it too. They just lost a great player. Tony gets heated at Polly, pointing at her, calling her a clown. He thinks Polly voted for him, but she didn't. Elsewhere, players are speculating who the unaccounted vote for Tony is. It's Georgia, who told Polly and Lorenzo that she voted for Tony, but asked them to keep it a secret. The next day, players feel like Tony has cracked at camp. Georgia doesn't feel like Tony is made for this environment. Gabby's replacement is Morgan, also from Cheer. On the show, Gabby's like the Beyonce. Morgan's like the Kelly. Kelly's good too, though. They're quickly sent to their challenge at the freaking wall, but Tony isn't with them. He's sulking by himself. Tony gathers the group and tells them that he basically doesn't like the game, having people not like him, getting sent to the wheel. In his last confessional, he says quitting and leaving on his own terms is the manliest thing he could do. So we lose Tony here, who came from the mole and was a huge villain on that show. He was showmancing on there, wasn't afraid to be disliked by the group, and here it started off more of the same, with him talking to himself in the mirror, having his showmance with Gabby, getting into it with other players, mostly players on his own team. In this short 4 episodes, we saw him go through such a spectrum of human emotion, and probably all 7 deadly sins. He arrived as the most jacked guy, he was calling the other guys princesses, then his team goes on to lose every challenge possible, which was the first part in him cracking. Then Georgia says Lorenzo's hotter than him, which, like I said, really cut him to his core, since so much of his life and way of living is his appearance. Add on to that Gabby getting sniped from the game, and him getting votes on the wheel, knowing that people secretly don't like him, and that one of them could be Gabby. I can see how this experience was worse for him than the mole, where the game wasn't as personal and was a little more light. Had he stayed, he was going to continue to get beat up by the game and get voted onto the wheel over and over when he could have been home having much more fun doing the extracurriculars he gets into on Instagram and elsewhere. In my opinion, he's the star of the season so far. The camera just loves him. Every time he's on screen, it was fascinating. Bums that he quit because he was making good TV, and I fear it could prevent him from being asked on future shows like The Challenge that I think he'd be fun on, and bring Nish and Hannah from his season onto season 2 of Battle Camp. The other players barely react to this. Georgia's sad that he's leaving, but glad he's gone from the game, and they head to their challenge where the Eagles are down a player, but Taylor quickly sends in Nick from the circle and Perfect Match, who refers to himself as a nerd and wants to prove you can be a nerd, but also be athletic. He talks about himself like he looks like Steve Urkel. They'll be playing pole position. One player from each team will be balancing on poles coming out of a wall. The other players will play cornhole to hit holes that correspond to their competitors' boards that they're standing on. If they fill that hole, they remove that pole. The last player standing will win the challenge for their team. The first round sees Polly, Avery, and Bree on the wall. Wolves and Bears are targeting the Eagles because they're scared of Nick. Polly drops first, meaning the Eagles won't be winning. After an impressive save from Bree, Bree eventually drops, giving the Bears a win for the round, winning their third immunity in their team. Round 2 is a face-off between Eagles and Wolves to determine the loser, with Nick and Louie on the wall, competing to save themselves from last place and the wheel. It's a nail-biter between these teams. This is the best challenge of the season so far. Georgia and Morgan are carrying their teams with the cornhole, but Louie is left dangling with no pegs, leading to an inevitable fall, and another last place trip to the wheel for the Wolves for the third time in a row as well. After the challenge, the Bears twerk to celebrate. QT proposes they make a 6-person alliance with Louie and Trey to keep themselves safe further. They summon Louie and Trey right in front of Morgan and Nick. The new 6-person alliance plots to vote the new players onto the wheel over and over. The next day, Bree and Louie are still canoodling. Morgan teaches the guys how to cheer, and the Bears decide who's facing punishment, called Spill, where they'll be balancing drinks on a tray. They punish Nick, Morgan, and Trey, nominating their new ally, with hopes that he'll beat the newbies and hide their alliance. When it's announced, Trey is shook and pissed. For the punishment, they need to hold a tray of drinks above their shoulder. The person who lasts the longest saves themselves from going to the wheel. They went from an exciting daily challenge to this that was like watching paint dry. Morgan drops first, followed by Trey, so Nick has spared himself one wedge on that wheel, where you'll find Morgan and Trey. Following the challenge, Trey is still pissed and goes on offense, talking to everyone to get them not to vote for him. He even throws Louie under the bus to Polly, asking Polly to vote for Louie instead of him, saying he'll return the favor. Which leads us to episode 5, titled Draft Day, which starts with Polly instantly ratting Trey out for turning on his boy Louie. Gio says Trey is selfish and lacks character for that. Dang. They head to the vote, and ahead of the wheel, Bree and Louie reaffirm interest in each other. Polly shares with Gio that Trey is a traitor, which makes it back to the Bears, who are flabbergasted. They show up at the wheel, where Taylor lets them know that after this boot, the game is changing. Taylor throws the wool on the wheel and adds 2 for Morgan from Georgia and Lorenzo. Bree gets a vote from Shuby, 7 for Nick from Avery, Gio, QT, Trey, Louie, Morgan, and Bree, and 2 votes for Louie from Nick and Polly, a result of Trey's campaigning. Trey has no votes, guess his campaigning worked. He says he wishes Louie didn't have votes. Lorenzo's face is like, this bitch. They spin the wheel and eek, it lands on Louie. So we lose our sweet innocent Louie. I've said before, I just don't like Too Hot to Handle. I think the premise of the show is dumb, and everyone on it is annoyingly horny, but this guy is so down to earth. I can't believe he's from there. From what I gather, his storyline there is that he was a bad boy, but now he's reformed over the 2 seasons he was on, and now he's a gentleman. He's on the Wolf team from the start. It's just such a bad team, ending up on the wheel over and over again, despite him being one of the better competitors on the show. He has a showmance with Bree, which seems really authentic, so them canoodling makes a lot of sense. Who wouldn't, honestly? Please don't comment, I wouldn't. He was a decent player here, seemed well liked by everyone, and was brought into the majority alliance only to get turned on by his friend and voted for by 2 players on the fringe of the game, so I can't really blame him for what happened. He truly got dogged by Trey. Following Louie's elimination, Taylor tells them that tonight's a double elimination. He's gonna spin that wheel again. Let's just try it again, you bunch of bastards. He spins that thing and it lands on Bree. I have pretty much the same things to say about Bree as I do Louie. They seem like a cute couple. She showed up ready to compete and she gave it her all. Her best moment was hanging on the wall and having a good save in the cornhole challenge. She played a decent game. She was never really discussed as a target. Bree caught a stray from Shuby in this episode and was eliminated by the twisted fate of the wheel. But the night's not over. Now there's going to be a tribe swap. Taylor lets them know that tomorrow they're switching from 3 teams to 2. Following the night's events, Trey is feeling guilty for what he did to Louie. Lorenzo continues to roll his eyes freely at Trey, calling him Serpentine in confessional. The Bears face the fact that their berry days are coming to a close, and Polly confirms with Trey that she held her end of the deal, and now he owes her one. But Trey is exposed and he doesn't even know it. The Bears wake up ready to take Trey down. Players head to the lake to meet their 2 new teammates. We meet Chase from Too Hot to Handle and Perfect Match, and Kyle from The Circle. Georgia recognizes Chase as a previous love interest on the show, but they're friends now. Nick knows Chase from Perfect Match too, and QT was allied with Kyle on The Circle. Kyle the Bear and Chase the Eagle are team captains. They'll play tug of war to decide who picks first in a schoolyard pick. Chase wins and gets to pick first. Chase picks Georgia, Kyle picks QT. Now the picks get to pick pick. Georgia picks her friend Lorenzo. QT her old bear friend Gio. Lorenzo picks Nick to target him. Gio picks another bear with Avery. Nick picks Trey. Avery picks Morgan, so they have someone to sacrifice. Trey takes Polly, and Shuby is last picked, joining the entire old bear tribe on the new bear team. For their challenge, they'll be playing a spelling bee, but the player's spelling will be sitting on the blob from heavyweights. If they spell their word wrong, they'll be launched. The team with the least amount of points will be added to the wheel, but in a twist, the winning team no longer has immunity. I'm not going to go into the weeds of the spelling bee, but I'll show clips of these players getting launched because it's funny. These words are all really easy. The episode ends on a cliffhanger with Avery deciding whether or not she wants to throw it to make herself look more beatable. And we get to episode 6 titled Battle of the Bears, where Avery decides to do the right thing and spell her word right. QT spells advantage, starting with ADA, making Avery think that she threw the challenge. Then Shuby can't spell ecosystem, but Avery gives him the benefit of the doubt. Trey wins this for the Eagles, sending the Bears' names all onto the wheel. Taylor offers them a one-time relief from punishment in this round. Back at camp, Kyle is geeking more than anyone has about them being at camp with a treehouse. The teams are 6 and 6. They have to sleep in the same cabins, with 2 players now in cots. Why can't they share the beds? If you make me sleep in a cot, you're done. In the bear cabin, Avery's going hard to smear Trey's name, but Avery is annoying QT. These two are getting under each other's skin lately. On Eagles, they feel like Shuby is innocent and likable, and Avery is the leader of the strategy for the Bears. Back on Bears, Avery tells Gio she feels like QT through the challenge. Gio gets heated about this. Avery's ready to expose QT, and she tells us she never would have played like QT, even though earlier this episode, she was considering throwing the challenge in the exact same way. So saying never is crazy. Also, QT didn't do it. Morgan's on the show saying she's afraid of ketchup. Okay. Also, there's dogs at the camp that are never explained. Can I pet that dog? Kyle and QT sync up on the net, agreeing they don't trust Trey or Avery. Trey is trying to keep Polly close. She's low on allies, but she knows she can't really trust him. In the morning, they're told tonight is another double elimination. QT tells the group that she wants to open a bookstore, which Avery finds mind-blowing because QT allegedly can't spell. Trey tries to work on Kyle. Kyle tells Trey he's never heard anyone say anything bad about Trey, lie, and that he doesn't think Trey would backstab someone, another lie. Kyle walks away from this even more feeling like Trey is a liar. QT continues to talk about her love of reading, which becomes comical, and the players make a last-minute scramble for votes. Polly tells Kyle that Avery is campaigning against his ally QT, and there's a whole montage of Avery's smear campaign against QT's highly literate self. Kyle brings this back to QT, who swears on the Bible and her whole family that she didn't throw the challenge. Players vote, and Avery shockingly votes for Trey, telling the others she's a loyal, honest player who wouldn't vote for someone on her team. They get to the wheel, where the Bears are already up once on the wheel. Chase got 2 votes from Morgan and Shuby. Trey got votes from Kyle, Gio, and Avery. Trey is shocked to get any votes. Gio owns up to voting for him, saying Louis should still be there. Avery says she did too, and that she's an honest player. Avery says Trey's not honest. Trey tells us he blames Polly for everyone knowing about the Louis thing. QT got votes from Georgia, Chase, and Polly, leading to QT telling the group that there's someone starting rumors about her. Avery tells QT she didn't vote for her and had nothing to do with it. QT calls Avery out for this. QT puts Avery on blast. Avery responds, preaching that she didn't vote her own team. QT says she did vote her own team, and she's proud of it, which leads to the reveal that Avery got 4 votes from QT, Trey, Nick, and Lorenzo. Taylor spins the wheel for the first time in this double, with it slowing down right between QT and Avery, leading right into episode 7 titled A Wolf in the Eagle's Nest, where that wheel stops at Avery. Even after being eliminated, Avery continues to defend to the group and in confessional that she'd never play a dishonest game. So we lose Avery here. I was rooting for her on the mole. She has some queenie energy. She comes into these games with an instant target because she's pretty and smart and she knows it. People can't take the doll. So she plans to come off as weak, even in the premiere, but against her own best judgment, she beats her punishment and makes herself look like a strong competitor. She gets votes at the first elimination, survives, and then goes on a winning streak with the Bears, keeping themselves safe until this episode. She had time to build those bonds, especially with the Bears, and in this first round as new teams, she again tells us she wants to throw the challenge to look weak and doesn't do it. Nobody besides Avery was even suspecting people who got questions wrong of throwing, so she should have just done it. And she goes around smearing QT, who's universally liked. Overall, I think she just overthought the whole thing, and her first thought of playing dumb from the start was probably the way to go about it. I appreciate that she played hard, and for that reason, I hope we see her again. But if she wants to win, she needs to clean it up. They spin the wheel again, and the second player eliminated is Gio, who was only on the wheel once from losing the challenge. He started the game off on the Bears team, and had a really great life at camp. Tons of friends, no drama. His girly Polly shows up to make life even better. His team kept him safe from crushing challenges, which he was great at as well. I didn't see any negatives from him, though from a TV standpoint, not having drama or a memorable moment is kind of negative. And for that reason, though I think he's a great competitor, I'm not rushing to watch Selling OC just to see more from him. But I wouldn't mind him being on another show. Following the eliminations, Trey fesses up to his team about his involvement in the Louis situation. The next morning, they head to their challenge at the freaking wall. They'll be rock climbing against an opponent, racing to the top, hitting buzzers along the way that'll shock their opponent. If they fall, they have to start over. The first to the top wins a point for their team. First team to 4 wins the daily. 2 players from the Bears have to go twice because they have less players. I don't even think I could climb this thing once. The first round is Nick versus Kyle. Nick smokes Kyle, earning a point for the Eagles. In QT versus Polly, this is a tight race, with Polly always an inch ahead. A shock makes QT fall, but Polly gets tired so close to the top, and QT shocks her off. QT makes it to the top first, winning a point for the Bears. Next are Trey and Shuby. Trey whoops poor Shuby-Doo, giving Eagles their second point. Chase against Morgan. You've got to root for the underdog. Morgan being put against this guy, who was pretty much sent into the game as a mercenary, but Morgan kicks Chase's ass. It's always the quiet ones. This makes it a 2-2 game. Georgia versus Kyle. Georgia holds her own, but Kyle wins for the Bears, giving them a lead. Next are Lorenzo and Morgan. Lorenzo leaves no crumbs with this. He said he's going to climb like a monkey. He really did, and they tie it up. Each team has to pick one player for a tiebreak. Nick and QT face off. Nick wins for the Eagles. They should have had 2 players from Eagles sit out for this. Having players go twice doomed them to a loss, so the Bears will be up on the wheel again. Later, the Bears plot to get players on the Eagles to vote for each other. Kyle plans to convince Trey to turn on his team, and Trey doesn't feel like part of their team anyway. He shares this with Kyle, and Kyle offers to Trey that they'll target any Eagle that he wants. The Eagles have to dish out a punishment, an eating challenge. Trey tries to ask the group to spare Morgan from it, but they don't consider what he has to say. They choose Kyle, Morgan, and QT to face the punishment. Morgan's scared of ketchup, so we'll see how she does. They have to eat each dish that's served to them within 60 seconds. The player who eats the most successfully will be spared from an extra slice on the wheel. The first dish is mac and cheese topped with a freshly fried cockroach. Not gonna lie, this one looked kinda tasty. They get started, and they all get it done. Morgan really ate, literally. The next one is pancake covered in worms. That's a lot of worms. Morgan doesn't try it and is out. Kyle and QT eat their wormies. The next dish is pizza topped with a tarantula. This was gross. The tarantula looks like poop. QT gives it a good effort, but Kyle demolishes this and saves himself from pun. What is pun? Short for punishment. Later, Georgia and Lorenzo eavesdrop and catch Trey plotting against the Eagles. Kyle furthers his strategy by ratting Trey out to Chase, telling Chase that Trey is voting for him. Kyle has caused so much trouble on the Eagles right before the vote. They get to the wheel where the 4 Bears are added to the wheel, with QT and Morgan from pun. Morgan got 1 vote from Georgia. Trey openly says he doesn't feel like an Eagle. Chase calls him out for being a rat snake, and it's revealed that Trey got 3 votes, all from his teammates Chase, Nick, and Polly. Georgia got a vote from Morgan, Lorenzo from Kyle, Kyle from Lorenzo, and Chase got 3 votes from Trey, QT, and Shuby. They spin the wheel. There's a lot of names on there. Which leads to episode 8 titled Loose Lips Sink Ships. The Wheel of Doom is still going, and it lands on Morgan. So we lose Morgan, who arrived late to the game and never really had much influence in the game. An interesting choice to put her on this cast. I don't know what they were expecting her to do. I'm surprised they had 2 players from Cheer, a show I'd think Netflix would want to leave in the past given some of the controversy. She's a bit boring, though there's some appeal to plopping this innocent little girl in the middle of a crazy situation, but it doesn't even feel like she wants to be on reality TV. Her most memorable moment was kicking ass on the rock climbing wall. At least there was that, but I'm done with the Cheer people on Battle Camp for now. Following Morgan's departure, Kyle is disappointed that all of his successful effort to get votes onto Eagles resulted in a bear still leaving. The next day, Kyle plans to ask Trey to throw the challenge. To help the Bears win, Trey promises the Eagles that his days of 2-timing are over. That's what they always say, am I right, ladies? Kyle approaches Trey and asks him to throw the challenge. Trey agrees to it and they head to the lake for the challenge, where the 3 little bears will face off with the flock of Eagles in shots fired. In this challenge, there are 3 positions: shooters who fire balls to the catchers, the catchers pass to the scorer, who balances on floating docks to the basket. There will be 3 rounds. In each 5-minute round, the team with the most baskets wins. All 3 bears will play in every round, but the Eagles will get to switch it up. The Eagles don't trust Trey and sit him out of the first round, and they get started. QT and Nick are shooting, Shuby and Chase are catching, and Georgia and Kyle are scoring. Eagles get to a lead from Shuby missing some catches, but Bears catch up, even taking a lead, with Georgia really struggling with the floating docks. Bears win the first round, but Kyle is exhausted, so Bears swap Shuby and Kyle's positions. In round 2, Trey replaces Georgia as scorer. He winks at Kyle, signaling he's going to throw it, and goes on to miss his first shot. As a viewer, you would think he's throwing it, but he tells us he thinks it's smarter to ride for his team, and Trey makes this round a blowout, winning round 2 for the Eagles and tying the score. In round 3, Kyle's back as scorer, facing off against Trey, but Kyle takes a hard fall that lets the Eagles take the challenge win, sending the Bears onto the wheel again, and the 3 Bears automatically will face the punishment as well. Back at camp, Kyle's on a mission to get Trey. He proposes to Chase and Shuby. They all vote for Trey in this round. Shuby doesn't like that Kyle put him on blast and feels like Kyle's being messy with Chase, but Shuby and Kyle work it out later. In the morning, Trey exposes to the Eagles that Kyle asked him to throw the challenge. They're happy that Trey didn't throw it. Kyle continues to campaign against Trey, but everyone at camp, including the other Bears, think Kyle's lost the plot and are threatened by Chase and Kyle's friendship. The Bears head to their punishment, detention. They have 10 minutes to individually take a quiz. The player with the most questions right out of 15 are safe from punishment. QT says she reads 100 books a year. Some Somewhere out there, Avery is rolling her eyes. Kyle is awful at this and gets 4 out of 15 right. QT got 8 and Shuby got 9, sparing Shuby, adding Kyle and QT to the wheel again. Later, the Eagles strategize. They fill Chase in on the plan to pile votes on Kyle. Chase has to choose between his bro and his team. When Chase comes back from voting upset, Trey thinks it's hilarious that Chase came for him for voting for Louis when he didn't even vote for Louis, and now Chase voted against his friend Kyle. At the wheel, Taylor fills out the board with the challenge losers and punished players, adding Chase twice from Shuby and QT's votes. Trey got 2 votes from Kyle and Chase, revealing that Chase didn't turn on his friend after all. Chase owns his vote, admitting he went against the Eagle plan, and Kyle got 5 votes from Nick, Polly, Trey, Lorenzo, and Georgia. Kyle calls Trey a snake and calls out Nick and Georgia too. Everybody's catching strays tonight. Which takes us to episode 9, titled Fanning the Flames, where Taylor spins the wheel and that thing lands on Kyle. So we lose Kyle, who ends up being a huge presence on the season. Despite being such a late entrant, it feels like he was there from the beginning. He becomes the captain of the new Bears, teaming up with his Circle pals, and that team loses over and over again. He tries his best to strategize. These Circle players are much better strategists than anyone else on the cast, given how much harder the Circle is to navigate socially than this show or any of their other shows. He tries to save the Bears from their doom with his strategy, working on their relationship with Trey to get Trey to defect, which is a good strategy. Find the crack, create division, and for the first vote, he was working this. It did work. He got half the wheel filled with Eagle names, but when a Bear still goes home after all that work, he gets frustrated. Tries to get Trey to throw the challenge, and when Trey doesn't throw it, he tosses all the work he put in, with Trey aside, and makes an enemy of him, which is not so good. After his plot to get Trey to throw came out, by the time of this week's vote, the players were rubbed the wrong way by his gameplay, and all of the Eagles piled on him, resulting in his boot by probability. He is a good player, and can be silly and fun. I feel like if he started in the game earlier, he would have done much better. He should get another chance. Following Kyle's departure, Taylor finally tells them the teams are no more, and the final 8 are playing individually, with solo challenges starting tomorrow. At camp, the Eagles are pissed at Chase. QT and Shuby are happy they survived and feel like the emerging drama is great for them. Elsewhere, the drama keeps emerging. Chase and Trey have a tiff, ending with Chase telling Trey to kiss his ass. Chase sleeps by himself in the old wolves cabin. Having the cabin to yourself sounds like a dream. And Trey bunks up with the Bears. The next day, Chase shows up late to breakfast like New York from Flavor of Love. Unlike New York, he doesn't say good morning, not you, you can choke, but he says he's choosing peace over violence. But Trey and Chase still bicker about the difference between how they handled the Louis and Kyle eliminations. Georgia and Lorenzo give Trey a terrible drag makeover, so Tracy flaunts her Brooklynite pedestrian day drag all over camp, and they head to their challenge, a nighttime challenge where they'll kayak to get supplies to build a fire. Better supplies like lighters and matches are further away, but things like flint are closer. The first 3 players to get their supplies, come back and build a fire to burn through their rope will keep their names off the wheel, and get to decide which 3 players will face punishment. The bottom 5 players will all be added to the wheel. Lorenzo says he can't start a fire, he can barely start a computer, and they get started. This is chaos. Nick loses his paddle, and Georgia takes the lead with the paddling. Players who go for the flint get back first. Getting the flint seems like a temptation trap. Survivor players struggle with fire making challenges, and they have tons of practice. Lorenzo and Georgia come back with matches. Polly and Chase are the only ones who went the furthest to get lighters. Everyone ends up making fire at the same time. The people who went for the flint are really looking silly now. Lorenzo finishes first, followed by Chase, and it comes down between Georgia and Polly. Polly finishes and is the 3rd winner. Back at camp, Nick tries to smooth things over with Trey, but tells us he still wants Trey out. The next day, players learn that tonight is another double elimination. Chase, Lorenzo, and Polly have to dish out a punishment called Just Hold On. They choose Trey because obviously, Shuby because they feel he has an easy ride so far, and Nick. These players have to hang on to a rope as long as they can, and the last player hanging on avoids being the big pun. They get started, Shuby falls first, Nick struggles the whole time and eventually falls too, sparing Trey from the punishment. Nick tells us he plans to keep Georgia and Lorenzo and QT and Shuby all close to help him get to the finale. One thing about Trey, he's trying. He meets with Chase and tries to make a deal to not vote for each other. Trey proposes they vote together against someone else to help themselves. They decide to both vote for Nick instead. Players head to vote, then head to the wheel, where the 5 challenge losers and 2 punishment losers are added to the wheel, and add 1 for Chase from a Shuby vote, 2 for Nick from Trey and Polly, 5 for Trey from QT, Georgia, Nick, Lorenzo, and Chase, who went back on his deal with Trey, proudly. Taylor spins the wheel, and that thing lands on Nick. So we lose Nick, who came in being seen as a huge threat in his first episode. Everyone was targeting him so heavy for like 2 rounds. Then suddenly they weren't. I'll attribute that to good social game, I guess, because he stayed good at challenges, so it's not like they found him less threatening. I do think he's a good competitor, but on all his shows, I never found him particularly interesting or entertaining. I can't tell you one thing he did on this season that was even memorable, so I wasn't that mad about this departure. Which leads to episode 10, titled The Final Spin, where they spin the wheel again, and that thing lands on Trey. Saying goodbye to Trey, who we remember from Squid Game. for playing with his mom. He and his mom are both memorable individually, as well as both genuinely seem like huge gamers. Here, he's added to the Wolves team. His rivalry with Lorenzo was pointed out in the premiere, but that never resolves, escalates, or is even mentioned really. The Wolves come in last over and over, sending Trey to the wheel. I would equate Trey to players on Survivor who go to Tribal a lot during the pre-merge, and then feel like they have to play 10 times harder to survive throughout the rest of the game. Especially as the last wolf standing, he was just in a bad place, and always playing to get votes off of him. He was playing the right way. You really should be trying to get votes off of you. At times successful, other times not so much. Starting with the Louis vote, where had those votes came to him instead of Louis, his name would have been in Louis' place, and he could have gone home instead. I do think he's a good game player, but overall, his blatant shady behavior put him in a place where he was running in circles, cleaning up his own mess, until the other players were just sick of it. But he was one wheel spin away from being in the final, where he could have won the game. If Netflix makes a version of the Traitors, I'd expect him and his mom to both be there, but overall, I'm just not a fan of this Weasley man archetype to say I'm a fan of his. And with that, we're down to the final 6: QT, Shuby, Lorenzo, Georgia, Polly, and Chase. They learn that the goal of the final is to get their name onto the winning wheel, and one final spin at the end will determine the winner. Oop, Taylor said the thing for what it's worth. The finalists celebrate with s'mores and champagne. We learn that Polly has a hand injury from the last challenge that may affect her moving forward. The next day, they learn they'll face 2 punishments. The top 3 in each punishment will be added to the wheel. They'll be playing Submerged, the Ice Bath, and Full Throttle, the Pedometer Challenge. They'll be competing individually and find out the results later in the day. First is Submerged, the ice bath that Georgia's won already when she and Lorenzo beat Irina. They're holding their breath from the start this time. Shuby lasts about 20 seconds, followed by QT. The rest of the results are left a mystery. They get their pedometers. Polly is the only one who's done this before. She's got her little dance already. I love seeing Polly do this, looking like a wind-up toy. Later, they head to the wheel for the punishment results. The top 3 in the ice bath were Georgia, Lorenzo, and Chase, and the top 3 with the most steps were Chase, Shuby, and Georgia, leaving Polly and QT with no spots on the wheel yet. They head to their main challenge at the freaking wall. They'll have 2 challenges here. First, an endurance challenge where they'll be hanging on the pegs on the wall. In 2 heats of 3, the 2 players who have the longest overall time will add spots to the wheel. Polly can't play due to her injury, so she doesn't play this one. Chase, Georgia, and QT are in 1 heat. QT falls first, so she definitely won't be in the top 2, and Georgia wins this heat. Shuby and Lorenzo are in the 2nd heat, where Lorenzo outlasts Shuby, but the winners are based on overall time, which they'll find out later. They move on to a deception challenge, played in 2 heats. At the top of the wall, there are 3 planks. 2 say safe, 1 says drop. The first player out will pick a plank, then get to see which are safe or drop. The next players will grill them and decide if they want to pick a new plank, or steal a player's plank and send them to a new plank. The first group is Shuby, Polly, and Lorenzo. Shuby goes first. His strategy is to be honest. Shuby gets the drop plank, and he's honest about it, but Lorenzo thinks he's lying. So Lorenzo steals Shuby's board and finds out he stole the drop. He moves Shuby to a safe plank, and Lorenzo's honest with Polly, telling her to take the other safe plank, and Lorenzo is dropped, meaning Shuby and Polly will be added to the wheel. In the next round, QT gets started. She finds out she's on the safe plank. She lies, saying she's on the drop plank. Georgia thinks QT is setting her up, so she steals QT's plank and sends QT to another available plank that happens to also be safe. Next is Chase. He grills Georgia. She eventually cracks and admits that she's on the safe plank, so Chase moves Georgia to the available plank that says drop, adding Chase and QT to the wheel. Georgia decides not to do the drop, which is lame, but also why do it if you don't have to or want to? Later, the players head to the final vote. They'll each cast a positive vote for another player, adding a spot on the wheel for each vote they get. It all comes down to this. They head to the wheel, where all of the earned spots are filled on the wheel, and they learn that Georgia and Lorenzo won the hanging endurance competition. The votes to win are revealed. Bears, QT, and Shuby voted for each other. Besties, Lorenzo and Georgia, of course, voted for each other. And Polly and Chase made an agreement to exchange votes, making it a nice sweet ending to the voting. Everyone got one. There's one final stressful wheel spin, where any of them could win. It lands on Lorenzo, giving him the $250,000 grand prize. They celebrate. It's a happy ending. Let's talk about these players, starting with the last edition, Chase, who joined with Kyle as the last players to join. He's one of the people I remember from Too Hot to Handle, mostly because the roach landed on his head. He's funny and not as problematic as others. I'd much rather him on here than Harry Jousey. I hate Harry Jousey. He helped the Eagles win challenge after challenge, and while he was more a physical threat than Kyle, his loyal gameplay got him much further. There was some messiness in the vote where he went against the team, but it was so late in the game, it didn't really matter. He's a competitor, seems likable. He needs to drop the makeup tutorial because whatever he's doing in that mirror was hidden. This was a really serious side to him though. On his other runs, he was much more silly, and while I appreciate him trying to win, it wasn't the best TV. But of these finalists, I could see him being such a great addition to the MTV challenge. Polly was the first replacement to enter the game. Firstly, she's so strikingly beautiful. They had to wear team color bandanas in their headshots for the show. She put hers on her neck, and it made her look like a really serious flight attendant. She has such a powerful presence on screen. In the beginning, she caught votes left and right. Maybe people just didn't get her, or her being a newbie, but eventually she stopped getting votes and became a fun camp townsperson. She was playing the game, striking deals with Trey, then ratting him out, which made her be seen as an honest player. I never felt she'd be the winner, but she did well for herself, especially in the fire making challenge. She almost gave me motivation to watch Selling OC, but I already unfortunately watched Selling Sunset, which has gone so downhill since Christine left. Where is Christine Quinn and why isn't she on TV? Shuby starts off on the Bears. He's one of the more memorable circle characters, being a lovable figure there and here. He's one of those that capitalized on being the physically weakest on his team. Had they lost more challenges, he was never going to get votes. He's likable, beatable, and there's always a bigger fish to fry. If he were eliminated, it would have been from a random unlucky circumstance, and he makes it to the end where he performed well in the finale, got some bonus spots on the wheel, and had a chance to win. He played it right, and I think his friendship with QT was endearing. Speaking of QT, I had high hopes for her. Seeing her on this cast, she was playing hard on the circle, and is often showing up on reality TV strategy podcasts, so she knows what she's doing. On the Bears, they go on their winning streak, but she's constantly maintaining her relationships with everyone. Her name was pretty much never mentioned until Avery got a bug in her bonnet about QT, but fortunately for QT, Avery left in that same round. She has a rough go with a losing streak after the team swap, leading to her having to eat that tarantula, and coming into this finale, I thought she was going to win, but this finale performance wasn't the best. I have a lot more faith in her as a strategist than a competitor. She isn't the best at challenges apparently, but I still would like to see her back for a more strategy-based show. Georgia starts off on Eagles, and from the first challenge, she proved to be a great competitor. In most of the dailies, she's shown excelling and being a great team member, but never too threatening to be a problem. She has a mind for the game, being unafraid to turn against Tony and throw votes at him. I wouldn't be surprised if we see her again. She and Lorenzo played as such a unit. I should just talk about him. So we have our winner in Lorenzo, who said on the bus he wasn't going to be as bad as he was on Squid Game, that he'd be worse. From that statement, I was expecting messy drama and an early elimination, but actually by every metric on this show, he was better. He was great in challenges, crushing the kayaking, fire making, rock climbing. He was one of the better physical competitors, but his social game kept him well liked by everyone. And he and Georgia hung out and plotted together, never being targeted and having so many wheel ceremonies where they got no votes and were safe. Lorenzo has a great, unique style of dress that we got a hint of in Squid Game confessionals. Imagine his outfits if he's ever on Traders. He gave the full package: great game, challenge beast, some drama, especially with talking behind people's backs, and generous eye rolls at other players, entertaining confessionals. I think this is a great winner for the season. Squid Game, having cast hundreds of people, opens the door for so many great characters to return for next season. Anyone who stands out in a group that big should be held on to. I'd like to see people like Ashley or Dash come back for another shot at some money, because these characters deserve more screen time. This season was so captivating. It was a fun show that anyone could enjoy, whether you knew these players or not. If the goal was to promote these other shows and make you want to watch them, Perfect Match does a better job of that. The host, Taylor, survived the job. There were some good moments, like him giving Shuby a piggyback ride and consoling Irina, but I think someone more tied into the Netflix universe could be a better host, like Nicole Byer. I know I said I'm tired of Cheer, but Monica, the team manager from Cheer, would be a great host or gym teacher like mentor on this show. The challenges were fun and entertaining, especially the blob and the freaking wall, but some of the punishments were boring. I debated whether I liked the rotating cast where players come in as others are voted out. It doesn't seem very necessary. 16 players could have started on 4 teams. It seems like they did it this way because they wanted clean math on the wheel, but we learned as the numbers dwindled that the wheel works just fine when there are less players. The circle does this too, but I always felt it's not fair to the starting players that someone could just join in 5 episodes deep and have to do less work for the same amount of money. The big set piece here was the wheel. Having just come off watching $1 Million Secret, where so much on that show felt rigged, it was nice that for the most part, everything on this show felt fair, especially the wheel, where you're seeing it physically happen and it's not happening on a screen, where it could really be chosen by production. There were a few times where I wondered if production really did have control over the wheel. Did anyone else wonder about this? If the wheel is truly straightforward, I love it. But that's all I have to say about this season. This was my longest video ever, and doing 10 episodes at once was the biggest project I've taken on. If you've gotten to this point in the video, please give it a like and comment what you thought of the season, the winner, and all the events along the way. I do recaps like this all the time. Check out my page for a whole library of videos, and subscribe so you don't miss more. You can also follow me on social media, links in the description. Until next time, you know where to find me. Bye.